Join us today for the OSBA Forum while we welcome our guest, Dr. Stephanie Siddens, Interim Superintendent of Public Instruction. We'll be discussing how students were impacted by the pandemic, how COVID funds are being used to support students in schools, Future Forward Ohio and ODE initiative, the importance of family engagement and student success, and much more.
So we did see during that time, one of the, I hate to say benefits, during that time was the COVID relief funds that were made available to support students.
Yeah.
Can you share some type of supports that were used from those COVID funds
Sure,
across the state?
absolutely. So I'll kind of start by saying federal COVID relief funds were provided through the federal government to really support schools preparing and responding to the impacts of the pandemic. Schools in Ohio received about $6.68 billion that was allocated directly to schools and districts, and had broad set of allowable uses that were, again, designed to kind of impact and address the impacts of the pandemic. I would say it is very clear schools are spending their money and focus on learning acceleration and really focusing on helping students overcome the pandemic. They're doing a lot of great things. We have actually a great website called Future Forward Ohio, and I can talk a little bit about that. But we spotlight some districts and some of the things they're doing, and encourage our viewers take a look at what is happening out there. We also have what's called a transparency dashboard that's available on our website that articulates the funding that schools received, and then how they're spending that funding and the extent they're spending it. So that's something that can help us know, just members of the public as well as schools can see kind of how that spending is going. But it is most definitely, we see a lot of focus on learning acceleration and focusing on students recovering from the impacts that I described earlier around English language arts and math, for example, as well as student engagement. So those are some of the things that are going on.
I don't want to jump on you. You had mentioned Future Forward Ohio. Can you go a little bit deeper on that topic?
Yeah, thank you. So Future Forward Ohio represents our strategic priorities for helping students overcome the pandemic. So we really wanted a student-focused, positive message about our collective work at the state and local level, using those federal COVID relief dollars to help students overcome the pandemic. So Future Forward Ohio, again, is a kind of a website that you can go and access and see a lot more about it. But we created a set of guiding principles to help us really convey the important message that we really believe in our students. We know that students are resilient, that they can overcome the challenges of the pandemic with the right supports and interventions. And so we wanted to convey that. We also know that the time is now. So I talked about the fact that we are seeing recovery, but we have to really invest in a lot of supports right now to help students even reach pre-pandemic levels. And so we want to act as urgently as possible. We also want to make sure that it's clear that we believe in partnership, that schools cannot do this alone. We have to be all working in concert to provide that full system of support for students and families. So state, regional, local level, all of us working together, education, higher education, business, industry, so providing those comprehensive supports. We also know that we need to learn and adapt. So we're investing a lot of money and a lot of programming that we want to focus on what's working. And so we want to evaluate and learn from what we're doing and really focus on those things that work and pivot away from maybe those things that aren't working. And so those are some of our guiding principles. Now, we wanted to make sure in Future Forward Ohio that we were very laser focused on a few key priorities of literacy, workforce readiness, learning acceleration, and student wellness. And so again, that gives us a really important focus on those key areas of overcoming obstacles, but also helping students think about their why and what's next and what's beyond graduation, so that we're really focused on those key things that we think will make a difference. So that's kind of
Yeah.
a big, broad overview of Future
So
Forward Ohio.
If our members want to find out a little bit
Yeah.
more information, Dr. Siddens, on the Future Forward Ohio work, it's available on the website.
It is.
Yes, and they can get a little deeper dive.
That's right. They can get a deeper dive. They can see our description, but again, I would recommend taking a look at some of the spotlights we've been doing of our school leaders and programming, and we'll keep posting those that are available. We also put a lot of information out there about some of our state level initiatives as well, and that transparency dashboard I mentioned is also available on the website.
Yeah, that's great. I think one thing we talk a lot about is finding best practices.
Right.
What are you doing that I can
Yeah.
learn from and implement in our in the district? So
Right.
before we move on, anything else you want to talk about how Ohio is accelerating learning? Is there anything that we didn't have an opportunity to talk about?
So I talked about schools focus. We also have state level activities that are funding and focusing on learning acceleration. So I can talk a little bit about some of our state level initiatives, and again, more information is available on our website. Some of what we're doing is high dosage tutoring. That is something that a lot of states are working on right now. And what we mean by that is research-based, evidence-based approach to tutoring that is really delivered in kind of a small, either one-on-one or small group way, no more than 4 students, for example, that has tutors being trained to ensure they're aligning what they're tutoring on with what is happening in the classroom, for example, what we would want to see in high dosage tutoring. So part of what we've done with federal COVID relief funds at the state level is fund an initiative called the Statewide Mathematics Literacy Tutoring Grant Program. And so what we did was provide grants to higher education institutions. So we awarded 33 grants to colleges and universities. And what we asked them to do is provide tutors. They are primarily targeting college students or teacher preparation students to be the tutors and provide supports in literacy and math for students. So they partner with 1 or more schools to provide that. And the focus again is on literacy and math. And so that is a big program that's underway and an exciting opportunity for our colleges to be engaged. And it gives college students an opportunity to be in the classroom or with students
We were
and get
just-
some background.
Just talking about that
I was
last
gonna
night.
say, yeah, we were just talking about making sure that there's plenty of people in that teacher pipeline, and so that's awesome. I mean, for them to have an opportunity to really work with students. And,
That's right. It's a good. It kind of gives benefit for both our young students and our in pre-service teachers, for example, if they are targeting those students. Another statewide initiative around tutoring is Tutor Ohio Kids. So this is something that recent legislation put in place where we are working with the Central Ohio Educational Service Center and educational service centers across the state, where they are building the infrastructure for finding tutors, doing background checks on tutors, and helping facilitate local schools using their local COVID relief funds, for example, or other dollars to hire tutors. So it expands the tutoring options and opportunities by the educational service centers providing that infrastructure. So that's another key program that's focused on learning acceleration and high dosage tutoring.
Do those tutors come into the schools? Do the kids go to a public library?
So it's really up to the local communities to make the decision about how best to situate the tutor and the student. It could be happening on the school campus, whether that's the K-12 area or the higher ed, or it could be a different location. It's really up to that local partnership to make the best decision about what would work best.
With the high dosage tutoring and all these tutoring programs, are there measurables in regards to how we'll see how impactful these programs are?
That is a great question. So it's really important, again, back to that guiding principle where we want to learn and adapt. So we are conducting a formal evaluation of our tutoring program. So we will be collecting data on what the outcomes are. So these programs are just getting off the ground, but it is our hope that maybe if you have me back in a longer period of time, we can present even more of what we are finding, but it is important for us to have that evaluative information so we know if it's working. But yes, that's the goal, to have outcome data to know that it is in fact making a difference. We know from some of the national research on high dosage tutoring that it is in fact making a difference. I think there are some studies that show it can make help students make 3 to 15 months gain in learning if done in that sort of evidence-based approach way, and then it can really have a positive impact, especially on, again, vulnerable student populations like low-income students. Some of the national research is showing that. So.
And sometimes it's just having a positive adult to sit
Certainly.
and focus right on that student and
Absolutely.
say, let's work together. And
Absolutely.
so that's exciting.
Yeah. We also, in terms of accelerating learning, are focused on things like high quality instructional materials. So we've been working with educational service centers to provide training and supports to school leaders and teachers around selecting high quality instructional materials, all locally driven, but providing resources and professional development that can help support, again, administrators making those decisions at the local level. So that's some of what we've been doing. I also wanted to mention that we had in the December released new grant opportunities for libraries. So federal COVID relief funds were used to encourage libraries to apply for grants that would support literacy in local communities. And so we have, I think, 32 programs statewide. So that's on our website, a little bit about that. And then there's another program I wanted to mention called ACE Educational Savings Account Program. So this is a program that is designed to give, so it provides $500 to families to make their own decisions about what enrichment activities their child needs to support and recover from the impacts of the pandemic. It's for children who are ages 6 to 18 and for families that are between 0 and 300% of the federal poverty level. I would love it if your viewers made your families in your communities aware of this opportunity. We've got great information on our website. We can follow up and get that link information to you.
Is it ACE?
aceohio.org.
AceOhio.org.
But you can also find information on education.ohio.gov. But the program is really, again, designed to empower families to make those good decisions. Also, recent legislation made it possible that beginning in April, those accounts will go up to $1,000 as well. So we'll provide more information about it, and the eligibility for families will increase to up to 400% of federal poverty level. So again, we'll be sharing those changes in the coming months. But right now, families can already access the $500 account. So again, we'd love if your members made your communities aware of that.
Yeah.
And we've got some great communications toolkit things that we can share. So please ask your members to help us share the word, because we'd love to have more families sign up and become eligible.
Yeah.
So those are a few programs that we've been engaged in. You know, I think the other pieces we have, you will probably hear throughout my comments, the importance of partnerships, and we partner with a lot of our sister agencies. For example, I mentioned higher education, but also the Department of Developmental Disabilities. We've worked on making sure we're providing supports for students with disabilities to also access learning supports such as tutoring. And so that's another initiative called Learning Aid Ohio that we've been engaged in with them. So those are, again, a few examples that are just focused on learning acceleration, where we want to provide those supplemental learning opportunities that go beyond just the regular instructional day.
I did notice as you were explaining some of the different programs, the power of partnership seems to be very critical to the work that you're doing.
It's so critical.
And you specifically mentioned the educational service centers.
Yes.
And definitely want to give them a shout out, our member district,
Absolutely.
in regards to the ESCs. But could you just talk a little bit more of how you're modeling for our districts, how powerful partnership actually is?
Yeah, I mean, so I think that part of what we try to do is be in very close contact with all of our, again, I mentioned our sister state agencies and the governor's office and the General Assembly. Really, I mean, we are all working in partnership to really focus on student outcomes. We work closely with the Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services and Health, for example. But then, we really try to have good partnerships at the regional and local level. Educational service centers are a great example of regional entities that are throughout the state. There are 51 of them, and they provide incredible resources and supports for schools. And again, they have really also helped, they help us around family engagement, around learning acceleration. They've done a lot of work directly with schools, and so they are an incredible partner. Business and industry are also key partners for helping us work on how to, help schools at the local level. And that's where we kind of really think about workforce readiness and how can we really facilitate students seeing what's possible and what their future may hold, and those partnerships become really key. So those are a few examples of how we do that, but partnerships are incredibly important and valuable.
Yeah. So I would like you to speak a little bit about the importance of family engagement in student success, and maybe some information or resources that you can provide to our families about how they can help engage with their children and really help with that student success piece.
Yeah, thanks for that question. Family engagement is so critical. I cannot say enough about how important it is, and there's research that also shows the more we can engage families, the better students are supported and engaging in learning. We have a number of initiatives that we have worked on to try to address that. We talked about educational service centers, for example, and we have funded having a family and community partnership liaison in every educational service center. And their role is to really, again, focus on making those linkages and connections between students, families, and community resources. We've really asked them to also think about resources for, again, students and families in our most vulnerable populations. So those impacted by homelessness or in foster care or military-involved youth are some of the examples. But the liaisons are really important to, again, providing those connections and supports, and then even professional development, technical assistance to schools around how they can engage families. We also have a great partnership with Ohio State University, and they have the Ohio Statewide Family Engagement Center. So we have been a partner with them, but they have a great set of resources and information that are available to families. They work with national partners, but also state and local. They provide resources around literacy and dyslexia, and again, a number of areas that are really helpful in supporting families. So they're a great resource, and we can also get their website for you as well.
Great.
And then another program that we have been implementing for probably over 30 years is the Parent Mentor Program. And that is really designed to help parents of students with disabilities be paired with a mentor that can help, who's gone through the experience of navigating special education supports and services and helping, which can be quite complex, and there's a lot to kind of work through. So those parent mentors provide a support to families that are going through needs and supports and services. So they may be situated in a school district, or they may be situated at the regional level as well. So those are some things. Again, I mentioned the ACE program, which is that educational savings account. So again, that puts dollars right in the hands of families to make good decisions about what their child needs. And so that engages families also in a really important way to help them be involved in what their child most needs. And so that's another great opportunity. But those are some of the things we're doing with families. There's so much happening, though, I think, across the state at the regional and local level as well.
So do we have resources for families? Because what if families say, I don't really know what my child needs. I think this is great that I have this resource. Where would you suggest that they go to maybe say, here's some great things that you can do to engage with your children and use this funding?
Sure. So I did find the website to the Ohio Statewide Family Engagement Center, ohiofamiliesengage.osu.edu. And again, we can follow up with a link to send out to your membership. That would be a great
Okay,
website
great.
to check out.
Great.
We can also provide information around those family and community engagement liaisons that are situated in educational service centers. So those are some of the examples of areas that they can go as well.
Great. Great.
Yeah.
Well, as you mentioned before, we're in the month of January in the School Board Appreciation Month, but it's also budget time
It
in the
is.
state of Ohio.
It is.
And we're well aware that you and the State Board of Education have made recommendations, and we hope to see that budget in the very near future. Could you share with us just some of the
Sure.
priorities that were proposed by you and the State Board?
Sure, thanks for that question. Yes, it is budget season. We're working hard on that. So the State Board of Education between August and October, we work together on budget recommendations. So they have a budget committee in the State Board of Education, and then ultimately the State Board approved final recommendations in October. They really focused on, and I should say we collectively focused on literacy, workforce readiness, and learning acceleration. Yes, you're correct. The executive budget we expect to be released January 31st or soon after. And so, I think that, so once those budget recommendations were approved, we submit those to the Office of Budget Management from the Department of Education. Around literacy, for example, I'll start there. I mentioned that impacts of the pandemic were pretty significant. In looking at literacy proficiency, a key marker is grade 3 literacy, and we know that about 60% of all students are reading proficiently, which means 40% are not. That is a concerning number, and when you look at student demographic groups, that there are groups like students with disabilities, English learners, the proficiency rates are even lower, and that is just simply not acceptable that we have that many children. We know that third grade performance is tied to later academic success and graduation. And so the recommendations were that we really focus on building educator capacity to implement high-quality evidence-based literacy instruction. And so the recommendations included providing statewide professional development to K-12 educators around high-quality evidence-based literacy instruction. We also wanted to provide coaches that would be available to teachers in our lowest performing schools, so that the regional coaches could then be an ongoing support to teachers, kind of beyond just a professional development opportunity, but provide supports in an ongoing way. And then we also wanted to make sure that there were supports and incentives for selecting high quality instructional materials. But then we also wanted to make sure that we focused on teacher preparation. So the recommendation was that Department of Education work with higher education to really look at our teacher prep programs so that we could make sure teachers entering the workforce have that background as they are entering the workforce. And so that was among our recommendations. And then another key recommendations was the expansion of high quality preschool, which of course is a key for learning and literacy very early on. And so we have a statewide initiative, a high quality preschool program that has not been expanded probably since 2016. And so the recommendation was to expand the number of slots that are available. That focuses on families between 0 and 200% of the federal poverty level. And then we also just recommended that we continue supports for the birth to 5 population. Things like the Ohio Governor Dolly Parton Imagination Library, which is a key way to get books in the hands of families every month of children's 0 to 5 years, and that's available to every Ohio family and child that's 0 to 5, and that provides some good family activities. And then programs like Help Me Grow, which is implemented through partner agency to help identify young children at risk even before the age of 2 so that they can have supports. So all of this collectively are kind of within the literacy recommendations so that we're really focused on learning and development and high quality evidence-based literacy instruction. So that's the literacy bucket. And then we had a focus on workforce readiness. We know that students are really going to need to be thinking again about their why and what comes next after graduation. We know that most of our in-demand careers and jobs are going to require a certificate or some sort of degree, and we know that the earlier children can be exposed to career exploration and awareness activities, the more likely they will see themselves in possible careers moving forward. And so we really wanted to have recommendations that kind of tie into those. So among the recommendations included supporting the quality of business advisory councils. Schools have business advisory councils and are required to have them, and they are really key in partnering schools and business and focusing on the workforce needs. We also wanted to make sure that we are giving opportunities for students to have real-world learning experiences and kind of work-based learning, so we recommended that schools be incentivized to offer those opportunities, but then also that businesses would be incentivized to provide the opportunities through suggesting a tax credit, for example, to businesses in doing that. We also wanted to see expansion of career technical programs, whether that's in career technical centers or schools or districts, so that more, again, programs that tie students to in-demand job opportunities are available. So those were some of what were in the recommendations. I mentioned that career exploration and awareness. We actually believe you can start as early as possible, pre-K, kindergarten, to help children think about what the possibilities are. So we wanted to recommend resources and supports for students starting as early as possible for that career exploration and awareness. So those are some examples of what were in the budget recommendations, and we're about a week out from kind of seeing what the first release will be.
So I
Again,
think
we see those partnerships.
Right,
There's
right.
a lot of partnerships in
Definitely,
there. So
definitely.
Yes,
yeah.
it's the key theme.
Absolutely.
It is.
And I think in the midst of those recommendations, one of the big issues that our districts are facing is in regards to educator shortage and needing more teachers in the building. So to hear those recommendations, how the supports can be around teachers and how we can encourage more students to be interested in going into education, I think that's going to be really beneficial to the districts. Definitely.
Agreed. Definitely. Great.
Okay. All right. So, as a former teacher, after teaching for 47 minutes, I would say to the students, listen, if you didn't hear anything I said, this is my one takeaway to make sure when you leave my classroom. So here we are. We're at the end of our time together, and I just want to ask you, is there something you want to make sure that our viewers today take away from our time?
Yeah, well, I feel like it would be great to go back to our theme in this conversation of partnerships. I hope everyone heard, we at the Department of Education are really focused and dedicated to those partnerships that we talked about. Clearly, we are focused on accelerating learning and literacy and workforce readiness, but again, schools cannot and should not be expected to do that alone. So I think that these priorities are things that we can all sort of be in agreement that are so critical. And through partnerships, I think we can help children overcome the impact of the pandemic. It is absolutely possible for us to do that. And again, if we can work together and dedicate our combined and consolidated resources, I think that that's possible. So that would probably be my big takeaway. Let's keep partnering and getting work done together.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, I think that if there's one thing I'd like for our audience to take away is awareness of the resources that are available out there. So I think that our time together really helped, hopefully, our members realize, my gosh, there's a lot of resources that are available to them and their communities.
Definitely.
So hopefully you'll take access those. I do want to do a shout out to our OSBA staff who has helped us today. It always takes a team to do these kind of things, and this is our first one. And so I want to, like I said, recognize our internal staff for making these possible.
Definitely.
And Dr. Siddens, I just want to thank you for your service.
Thank you.
I want to thank you for all the work that you do. You are always welcome here. We are, excited to hear how some of these initiatives go, and really will continue our partnership together.
Definitely. Thank you again, Dr. Siddens.
Yes.
Thank you, Kathy.
Yes.
Thank you, Mark. Just
Thank
really
you.
appreciate the opportunity.
Absolutely.
And love to come back.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we want to thank you, our viewing audience, for being with us here today. We hope that you have found value in this time that we've shared together. And we look forward to seeing you on February 28th at 11:30 a.m. For our next OSBA Forum. So go to the website, register today. See you on February 28th at 11:30. Kathy, we just did our first OSBA Forum.
We did. We did. We'll see you back on the couch on the 28th. Thank you.